So let me ask you about some of the non-substantive changes. So in lines 66 to 72, the bill says that deductions shall commence when the employer received a signed deduction authorization form from the bargaining agent and confirms with the employee electronically or by other means that they authorize the deduction. Can you explain that a little bit more in detail? I guess I'm trying to understand. If someone signs their union membership form, the union membership form says something to the effect of, I hereby authorize a dues deduction. You're saying that the employer now has to go and reconfirm something that has already been authorized that they have documentation for. Can you explain that part?
You're recognized.
Well, there's a couple issues here. First of all, under current law, we've received reports and anecdotally that some of the unions are submitting their membership on spreadsheets with no backup to the employer. So this would make clear that there needs to be a signed authorization for the dues to come out of their paycheck. But I was actually a little confused about it initially, and I just found out. So there's really two forms here that can be combined. There's the union membership form, and then there's the union the form that will allow the withdrawal from their paycheck. Now those can be combined, but that's two different things. Just to be clear.
Do you have a follow-up? You're recognized for a follow-up.
Thank you for the answer, Representative Plakon. So I know that we have, if we're talking about a teachers union, I know this applies to all unions across the board for now. But when we talk about, let's say, 67 different teachers unions that would be caught up here, there's probably some differences in what some of their membership or dues forms look like. You're saying that once they have received a signed deduction authorization form, so you're already setting the floor here. That's on line 67. They received a signed deduction authorization form that the employer then, after receiving that signed authorization, is then making contact with the employee once more again to confirm what has already been confirmed in the signed authorization. Am I understanding that?
This is, again, meant to address the concern that, let's face it, within labor unions, there is social pressure to go along, to join the union. I think that everybody would agree with that. So this provides the employee, in direct consultation with their employer, essentially a private conversation of, is this what you really wanted to do? Now, the employer's not going to say, don't join the union or anything like that. In fact, I would suspect that most of these would not be phone calls. They would probably be a bulk email or a bulk text message. Even text messaging would work for the confirmation. So I don't see it as much of an administrative burden. The staff analysis says it's insignificant fiscal. So I think that that's a reasonable thing to put in the bill. Again, going back to my premise, there's the right to work, the right to collectively bargain, and this makes sure that the right to work is not influenced by any social pressure that might surround the labor union.
Simple. We're removing line 66 to 78.
Representative Plakon, if you'd like to answer the Representative Show's question, you're welcome to.
I don't think that this amendment, will put it another way, this amendment would gut part of the primary purpose of the bill. And in terms of the communication, since Representative Smith brought up, he sent me a text message last night, so he did make an attempt, but we were both busy this morning. So with this idea or any other ideas that may come up on the main bill, I'm more than willing to have conversations before the next stop.
Do we have any further questions on the amendment? Seeing no further questions on the amendment, we don't have anybody registered to speak in public testimony for the amendment. Okay. All right. Members will move into debate on the amendment. Representative Henson, you're recognized in debate on this amendment.
I guess that's on the amendment.
On this amendment.
Just.
Yep. We'll have debate on the bill as amended later. You're welcome to close on the amendment, Representative Smith.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, The reason I'm bringing this amendment forward is, look, these lines in the bill are really problematic. What we have is a alleged problem. The problem that's being alleged is that somehow union members are not authorizing dues deduction. They're not, when they send a signed statement to their employer that says something to the effect of, like it says here, this is the Orange County CTA dues deduction authorization. I authorize and request Orange County School Board to deduct Orange County Classroom Teachers Association dues and assessments from my biweekly pay and to transmit the deducted amounts to the associated office. I understand the school board will discontinue dues deduction upon 30 days of written notification. It goes on and on and on. Obviously, that the employee is communicating very clearly that they are authorizing this dues deduction. That's just one example. And what Representative Plakon's language here that I'm trying to remove does is it says after they are required to sign this authorization for dues deduction, that we have to doubly, triply, quadruply check again one more time to make sure that they're definitely sure, even though they've signed an authorization to do this. So then what's the point? So then if we're authorizing upon authorization upon authorization, isn't the point here just to make sure that we bleed a few more union member dues out of the union, that we somehow ensure that we've lost maybe 10%, maybe 15% of dues collection because people are busy. I have 100 text messages I've not responded to since yesterday. I'm busy. We're all busy. If we sign the authorization, deduct dues from my paycheck, we mean it. They mean it. It doesn't need to be reconfirmed. Orange County CTA, they've got 15,000 members. So now they've got to go reconfirm after they have received a signed authorization. This doesn't make any sense. And in context about what we're about to hear, we're hearing another bill later in this committee that says that we're not even allowed to have automatic dues deduction. So I don't really know what's going on here, members, but we've got to get rid of this big government red tape and bureaucracy that Representative Plakon is proposing here. So please hit the green button and support this amendment. Thank you.
Having closed on the bill, we're going to do a voice vote on this amendment. So if you're in favor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your testimony. I'm curious if you have concerns around the employer now interfering in this process. Is it accurate to say that there's some employers who are out there, even in higher ed, employers who are hostile to the forming of unions? They are hostile to union members themselves. And if we're saying that the employer, who's already hostile in some cases to the union worker, that they have to confirm with the employee electronically or by other means. They could send a text, but they don't have to. What if they decided to make a phone call? And do you think a hostile employer could require that all of their union members, in order to be authorized, would have to call them back and go through that extra step before they go ahead and authorize those union deductions?
You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I can't speak for other employers. I do know that at FSU, I think they'd be happier if we didn't exist. It would be very easy just to muck up the process. And yes, there's a 30-day limit in the bill, but there are no penalties if somebody doesn't meet that limit. So they could basically sit on it as long as they wanted. And again, I can't speak as to whether there are employers who are actively hostile and would actively try to torpedo the process.
What about why we need this bill? I guess alleged spreadsheets that we still don't know where these spreadsheets are coming from. Folks who are wanting to join a union and who are wanting to have their dues deducted, they are signing an authorization form. They know what they're doing. I have not heard from one person in support of this bill. No one's contacted my office. We heard from a speaker today that said that their organization supported the bill. I don't think that that's a workers' organization. But I did get 600 emails, over 600 emails from workers around the state, employees, who are opposed. Not one email in support. 600 opposed. I've gotten 5 emails in the last 5 minutes from new people who found out about this bill. Opposed, 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 opposed. And the bill is purporting to address some of the issues of difficulty around the dues authorization process. Members, there's nothing difficult about this. You sign a form, you say, I want my dues deducted. Your dues are deducted from your paycheck. It's shockingly easy. It's very simple. There's nothing difficult about it. And if you realize, actually, I changed my mind, you just tell them you changed your mind and the dues deduction ends. We're told that social pressure is a problem. People are being pressured socially to join the union, that somehow they're being forced to sign this membership form, to sign this dues deduction, to go beyond just the membership, because we know people can be members and be represented without paying their dues, that somehow they're being socially pressured to authorize money out of their own paycheck to allegedly support an organization that they do not support and that they have a constitutional right not to support. Makes no sense. It's because that's not happening. But there is social pressure. Social pressure from the employer. The employers who, as we heard from UFF, would probably prefer that the unions don't exist. And if they don't exist yet, are going to have even more opportunities and even more tools to intimidate unions from being able to form. Now, this opportunity, this new opportunity to intimidate folks, I just kind of want to paint you a picture. So if you are an employer who is hostile to union workers, sure, they have a constitutional right to be in a union, okay, but we hear about this all the time because we know it's happening. It's actively happening in our communities. Employers who are discouraging workers from joining a union. You don't want to join that union. They just do nothing but cause trouble. You already have great wages. Why would you join a union? You already have amazing benefits. Why would you join a union? Now, under Representative Plakon's bill, we're giving that hostile employer another opportunity to intimidate. After an employee has signed their dues authorization form and submitted that, we are now requiring that same employer who tried to discourage them from joining the union, we are now requiring them to confirm with the employee electronically or by other means. You're going to make that phone call. Are you really sure you want to join that union? We talked about this. Just wanted to double check. I got your signed form, but here I am. I'm your employer. Just wanted to double check that you're sure about this. All right. Why are we doing this, members? We're doing this because we want to make it harder for unions to get funded. That's very obvious. It's very obvious because it's a theme. We see it every session. Oh, they're calling it a union busting bill again. You know, how effective is that messaging? Well, I mean, if you repeatedly file union busting bills, we're repeatedly going to call them what they are. A spade is a spade. This is a union busting bill. It's very overt. It's very obvious. Please vote against it. Thank you. I have this strike all, which is a big change. Originally in your main bill, you were including classified employees, also known as education support employees. So why the big change? So we're no longer tying up education support employees in the bill as I read it. Instead, we're now implicating state university system union employees and Florida college system. Why do we just walk away from one and just bring in two totally other groups?
You recognize?
Thank you for the question, Representative Smith. And so when I started, was contacted about considering amendments on the colleges and universities, I decided that the focus was going to be on just educators and not the support personnel. So that's why in K through 12, we're only dealing with the educators, and the colleges and universities, we're only dealing with the instruction personnel.
You recognize for a follow-up?
Thank you for the clarification. Just to be clear, I don't want the education support employees tied up in this as well, so don't get it twisted. But I do want to ask, look, there's a part of this bill that really stands out. I have concerns about a lot of the bill, but the part that stood out to me the most is that my read on what you're doing here is that you are prohibiting a blanket prohibition on automatic dues deduction from someone's paycheck for teachers' union members only. Is that correct? And can you please explain why we're just going to ban people from being able to automatically deduct dues from their paycheck if they're a teacher only?
You recognize?
Yeah, thank you for the question. And actually, as I was listening to your question and Dr. Templin's debate or comments on the last bill, I was excited as I was sitting there because you were talking about smaller government and wanting less government intrusion. This is the solution. This is getting government out of the way. We live in a digital age. We use Venmo, we use PayPal, we use all of these different sources to deduct dues. So get government out of the way. Get government out of the dues collection business. In the Janus versus AFSCME opinion, which was the United States Supreme Court opinion in 2018, not only, and we are talking about constitutional rights today, some of the constitutional rights we've talked about are an employee's right to work, an employee's right to unionize, to collectively bargain, but also their First Amendment rights. And that's what AFSCME, or the Janus versus AFSCME opinion focused on, was their First Amendment rights. So unions are political organizations. I mean, they engage in political activities, which is as their right. But why, as a matter of philosophy, should the taxpayers, the people who are funding our school systems, be the dues collector for this other political organization? So the most simple solution, to your point, on why do we have these extra extraneous processes, is to get the processes out altogether and have the members pay the dues directly to the union, which if they're deriving benefit from the union should be no issue for them.
Thank you, Representative Byrd. Did you have a follow-up? You recognize for a follow-up?
Thank you for that. Thank you for the answer, Representative Byrd. Excuse me if I have whiplash, because we've just gone from we must add additional paperwork and processes to dues deduction to we now are just going to prohibit dues deduction entirely. My question is, why only the teachers union? Because you are prohibiting automatic dues deduction from someone's paycheck if they're a teacher. But there's no mention in here of our police unions, of our firefighters unions. Why is dues deduction such a big government problem for teachers only, but not for fire and police?
You recognize?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and this goes to my answer to your prior question, which is, in my bill, unlike Representative Plakon's bill or Chairman Plakon's bill, focuses on the education system. So we're looking at K through 12, colleges and universities. So because that was my focus, that's why the bill addresses teachers.
Members, I would urge you to please support Representative Schlossberg's very good amendment. And just to restate, her amendment is removing the provisions of the bill that just ban teachers who are members of unions from being able to engage in automatic dues deduction from their paycheck. There's nothing wrong with this. What is the explanation for why we are fast-tracking a bill that says we're going to ban teachers only from being able to deduct dues from their paycheck? Why? What's the problem? Is the problem that our teachers' unions are too strong? Is our problem that our teachers' unions are doing too good a job at helping their workers get benefits, helping them get better pay? Last year, maybe they were too good at making sure Governor DeSantis declared 2020 as the year of the teacher. Why are we targeting teachers only? It's obvious. It's obvious why we're targeting teachers only and no one else. What's good for the goose should be good for the gander. If we are not also at the same time making a prohibition on police unions from being able to also do their own automatic dues deduction from their paycheck, then what you see, what your eyes are telling you, what your ears are speaking to you, or you're listening, what you're hearing, it is true. It is true that this is a purely political bill that is meant to punish our teachers' unions. Please vote for this amendment and against the underlying bill. Thank you. Listen, we didn't really get to talk about these lines in the bill at length, but what Representative Schlossberg is doing here is she is removing the annual requirement that these teachers union employees must sign and submit a form to the employee organization acknowledging that it's a right to work state. This is just more paperwork. They're going to be required to sign this form. They're required to sign similar forms when they join the union. But the repetition here, the fact that we're requiring them to do it annually, which is what Representative Schlossberg is trying to remove, is we're trying to get rid of all the burdensome red tape. Listen, I want to hear from Representative Byrd on what he thinks about this, because he just told us in the last amendment that he was trying to get rid of the big government, and that's why he's getting rid of any automatic dues deduction. So here we're just helping him along. We're getting rid of the red tape and the bureaucracy of signing this form every year. I'd like to hear if Representative Byrd supports that, because we can't sit here and say, oh, I'm banning dues collection and dues deduction from your payroll because I oppose big government over here, and then over here on this part of the bill, I want you to submit more government forms every single year. It makes no sense. It's a total contradiction. And the reason there's a total contradiction is that there's nothing ideologically consistent about this bill. The only ideological consistency here is that for some reason we are declaring that our teachers' unions are bad for our state, that they're bad for our kids, and therefore they must be punished. Please vote for Representative Schlossberg's good amendment. Thank you. Members, I'm going to vote against the main amendment because, look, the underlying bill was somewhat better than all of these changes that we've made. Not better meaning good, but at least the underlying bill was just about educational support employees, which isn't great, but now it's a much larger group of workers, which is everyone in the state university system, everyone in the Florida college system, and let's not forget what we're now doing to our instructional personnel as well with the banning of dues deduction. I voted no on everything, even the technical stuff, and I'm going to vote no on this too, because I don't want to have any part of this. I don't want to see a yes next to C. Smith's name on anything that has to do with this bill, except for my amendments, of course, and Representative Schlossberg. So please vote down on this amendment. Thank you. All right, members. Well, this is it. This is the moment here, and I don't want to just assume, even though this is my 5th year as a member, that the outcome here is a predetermined conclusion. Let's be real. The Republican members of this committee do not have to vote for this bill. You don't have to. You have an opportunity to vote against a bill that is clearly a union-busting bill, that is clearly targeting teachers. In the previous bill, we heard members of this committee asking for the carve-out. Can you please carve out the police unions? We don't want to hurt them. That's public safety. Oh, but if it comes to public education, I guess who cares? Anything goes, right? Well, here you go. You've got your carve-out. So my question is, how do we explain this bill to our constituents? Well, we just got to crack down on those teachers who've been our frontline workers through this pandemic. We got to make sure that they can't automatically have their dues deducted from their paycheck, because Lord forbid it should be convenient and easy. Why are we doing this, members? What is the point of this other than to be union busting? And again, it is not ideologically consistent. You can't sit here and say, oh, I want to get rid of automatic dues deduction because it's smaller government. And then in the very same bill, several lines later, then add all of this bureaucracy and paperwork to, the signed form from the union workers and say that they need more government over here, but not over there. It just doesn't make any sense. And members, this is serious. On Saturday, the 40th Florida teacher died from COVID-19. The 40th teacher. How is this a way to repay them? You don't have to vote for this. Last year, a version of this bill was numbered House Bill 1. We all know what that means. This is not House Bill 1. It's House Bill 835. Do you really feel like you need to do this? Please vote no on this bill. Thank you.